Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so knowing what your skills are and also what you're willing to spend time upskilling on. That's what
Mm.
makes games so hard is like knowing where to spend your time. And the fact that it's so multidisciplinary, you've got the art, you've got the UI, you've got the coding, the sound, the music. It's like 18 different jobs in in one. So man, you better do something to cut that down, know
Mhm.
where your strengths are and sure, if you want to learn more art, then you can do that. And my art skills have definitely improved, but I'm not as interested in continuing to refine them. So it gets to
Mm.
a point where it's like, well, I can scrape by and I can choose art styles that hide some of the issues with my art, which is partly why I went for this gritty retro aesthetic and probably partly why it's so popular.
Mhm.
When you pixelate things, they don't have to be perfect anymore. So it's just being smart with those decisions, being practical.
Mm. Mm. Yeah, that's a really good point. Um, especially with the upskilling one, right? Like you're gonna have to learn if you're starting to do game development, no matter where you're approaching it from, you're going to have to learn something new. Whether you're approaching it
Mm,
from the development side or the art side, you're gonna have to develop new skills. And it kind of goes back to the idea of how long do you want to work on this game for? Because you can become a sound folly. You can learn how to make music and program and do amazing 3D art. And that's something that's possible. Like there's people who've
mm.
done it. But at the same time, what are you trying to do with the game? And would you have been able to make something better if you'd spent that time focusing on what you're good at and maybe one or two other things?
Yeah, exactly. And what you nailed there when you said that was like, what are you trying to do with this game? What's your goal? If your goal is to learn as many things as possible about game development, then sure, doing everything yourself is a really great way to do that. But if you want to build games and you want to make any money from it or have people actually play the thing or finish it in less than 5 years,
Mhm.
then it's probably a good idea to restrict that in some way. And that might be using asset packs, it might be choosing an art style that's simple, choosing mechanics that are simple. There's many, many ways to make a successful game with a sort of subset of skills required.
Mm,
A
mm.
good example of this is the incremental game Node Buster,
Node
which is
Buster.
this really like juicy arcade
Ooh.
incremental game. And the visuals are really simple. It's
Mm,
all
mm,
just geometric shapes and some nice particle effects, but the whole thing feels so polished. And because
mm,
the
mm,
scope is small, because it's not like a huge volume of things. Instead of going shallow on like 1,000 different things, you go deep on like five things,
mhm,
right? So
mhm,
it's a really juicy game. It's got some satisfying incremental progression, some really nice sound, and the visuals are simple, but they look good
mhm, mhm,
because the visuals are simple, you can spend time polishing them up, you
mhm.
know? Um, so I think that approach is a good one.
Mm, mm. Yeah, like I'm thinking of all the really cool, like small scale games, and they all sort of do that same sort of idea. Like the game I've had in my head right now is Noita.
Oh,
Noita is
yes.
really cool. For anyone who doesn't know about
Yeah.
this, okay, this is a simple game, but it wasn't necessarily simple with how they developed it because they apply physics to every single pixel. They had to
Mm,
make a custom engine to make this viable. So it looks simple, but like this was actually a really complicated project.
yeah.
But it's that same idea of like going very deep into one core idea. What if we have a world where every single pixel is simulated and you make wands that do cool things to the pixels?
Yeah,
Good luck.
well, exactly. And if they had tried to layer in a bunch of other stuff on top of that, like, oh, well, it's also an RPG,
Mhm,
good luck, it's they had to cut a bunch of other things and keep
mhm,
it simple in other dimensions, but go really, really deep in that one singular thing that they do
mhm,
very well.
mhm,
It's a
mhm,
good example. Yeah, great
mhm.
game.
Yeah, yeah. Um, there's so many of these really cool. Really cool indie titles out there, and I'm so happy with what's happened with the game development space because for like for a long time, going from like the early 2010s up until maybe like 2016 or so, like the indie space was like growing, but it was still this like small thing that didn't really grab people's attention as much. It'd be like one or two little games here and there.
Mm,
But now it seems like, at least for the past couple of years, there's been some like indie title that people have been like, hey, this might be game of the year. Like, remember Balatro from last year?
yeah,
Last year? Yeah,
yeah,
I'm pretty sure last year. Um, that's another game that's like really simple. It's,
yeah.
hey, what if we have what if we just go crazy hard into roguelite for this dumb little card game and have the
Mm,
numbers go really big? People
yeah.
like numbers.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, Balatro is another great example, and man, that game would have made so much money, and it did so well. It just went absolutely viral. So
Mhm,
I'm also very happy to see how the indie space is progressing.
mhm,
A lot of people are really nervous about where indie games are going,
mhm,
and I am a little bit nervous too because the saturation on
mm.
Steam is so high, and I guess also with like AI becoming more of a thing, chances of low quality games sort of flooding the marketplace, it does kind of worry me.
Mhm.
I mean, even when I launched Spring Dash, like the thing that surprised me was I actually counted the number of games that launched on the same day, and it was like 60, something like that. And I was like, man, on one day, 60 games are coming out. How do you differentiate yourself? And I think it is really just a matter of, being smart with the strategy.
In 2024, approximately 19,000 games came out on Steam.
Yeah. Yeah. And the thing, that number just continues to grow, but the number of successful games, like the number of games that earn over 1,000 reviews, let's say,
Mhm.
that has stayed relatively steady.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
you're competing with more people for the same amount of spots.
Mm.
So if you want something successful, you just have to do something really, really well.
Mm.
And it's hard to do that when you're focusing on 18 different things in your game
Yeah,
rather than
yeah.
just three or four.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. If like it's going to be difficult to stand out, but if the game is just okay at a lot of things, like that works if you have an established audience, right? Like if you're, you know, you're making, I don't know, whatever number of Assassin's Creed games have come out, or Call of Duty games, or
Yeah.
pick any AAA studio that has a $500 million marketing budget and has an established audience over the past 20 years, right? Like
Yeah.
you can get away with doing things that maybe are not the best design wise because people are
Mm.
going to buy it anyway. But you can't make that assumption in the indie space unless you are a studio that sort of is about to break out of that space, right? Like if you're a publisher like a Devolver Digital, you're like it's like a weird sort of mix where it's like indie games, but you have a publisher. And then, if you're a studio like Supergiant, for example, they've made a number of games at this point and they have that established audience. They could
Yeah.
probably get away with releasing a game that wasn't up to the same quality as, Bastion or Hades. But
Mm.
if you're someone who, you know, no one's heard of, and there's
Yeah.
60 other games that came out that day, like, how do you stand out there?
Yeah, it's so tricky. It's so tricky. And I don't have like an answer that I think is, concrete. I don't think anyone has the solution to it all. But I really think that, being a game that's fun to play, and fun to play multiple times,
Hmm, hmm,
um, and just does something well. It needs to do at least one thing pretty damn well,
mm,
for it to stand out, and also something that when people look at it, they immediately know whether that's their type of game or not. It
hmm,
should be something that's readable and clear. Um, Sometimes I think it happens when you try to build a game with too many elements. You can watch a trailer for a game, for an indie game that's like that, and you come away thinking, I don't really know what the game's about. I don't know what the
mm.
gameplay is like. It seems like I can do 100 different things, but I just don't get the core like thread of the game.
Right.
And I think that's where Blood Vial has done okay. It's if you watch 5 seconds of Blood Vial gameplay, you get a pretty good idea of what the experience is like. Um,
Absolutely, yeah.
yeah. So I think that's what's helped get, those Twitter posts viral-ish.